What's up everyone? In today's video, I'm going to cover 5 tips that will help you become a better player for when you're solo queuing in Apex Legends. I'm going to cover some of the most helpful tips that not too many players are talking about when it comes to playing as a solo, so be sure to stay tuned throughout the video. If you've watched any of my recent videos lately on how players can improve, you would know that I've been telling you guys all to play with a pre-made squad. And this is for 2 reasons. 1, so you can try to find more success, and 2, so you can try to have a more enjoyable experience. However, whether it's I'm coaching players or I'm receiving comments on those videos, it's apparent to me, lots of you guys are still stuck solo queuing. And since I've solo queued thousands and thousands of Apex Legends games, I figured I'd let you in on 5 of my best tips so that you can try to succeed as a solo queue player. If any of you are new to my channel, just know it centers around helping you all improve at Apex Legends, so let's dive right into these 5 tips. Tip number 1, never rely on your random teammates. That's right, one thing you have to get through your head is 9 out of 10 times your random teammate is not thinking what you are. So whether you are anticipating that they will make the right decision in the heat of a battle, or whether you're trying to be a good teammate and guide them, chances are they probably won't live up to that expectation. Now, if they do, that's great, but never expect it. The sooner you accept this fact, the better off you will be as a player. Now, I'm not saying don't be a team player, but don't be so selfless that it gets you killed. Because becoming a great player means you have to think for yourself and for your teammates. In this regard, it's important that you are able to keep in mind what you need to do to survive and try to put yourself in the best position to win fights. A lot of randoms will just die simply because their teammates went in and died. And that's not always how you want to play it. You've got to think about strategies and advantages. If you are the aggressive type, you should probably be playing a mobility legend while you solo queue. And this way, you will have the abilities that can help you navigate in and out of tricky situations. I like Pathfinder a lot for solo queuing. Using his grapple to get out of a hectic situation so that I can reposition and heal is great. But also, if I get someone weak and I want to close the gap to secure the knock, I can use his grapple for that too. If you have a more passive playstyle, playing the support role could be great. Legends like Lifeline, Gibby, or Bloodhound can all assist your teammates in different ways, and those are some of my favorite support legends. However, keep in mind, if you choose a support legend and your teammates die and quit on you, being stuck solo as a support legend can be very limiting for you when you have to take on disadvantaged fights. One of the best ways to navigate as a solo is to smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm. This only takes a second of your time and it helps push my video out to more viewers, so thank you so much for doing so. I threw in another clip of me skateboarding at the end of this video, so go ahead and check that out if you're interested. Tip number 2, you've got to get better at dropping. A lot of players don't figure out how to drop correctly. Now, some of you guys will think this is common sense, but I know a lot of you struggle with this. The first way to improve this is by free looking. You need to try to get information on how many teams are landing with you. And when I say free look, I don't mean glance over and be like, oh, there's 4 teams coming with us, let's hope for the best. You need to look again and figure out where, if any, are landing close to you. This not only helps you out with where you should land, so you can increase the likelihood of you getting a gun or 2, but also you know where potential enemies are or could come from. This helps with your instant game plan after you've looted whatever was right in front of you. I see this issue all the time in my coaching sessions over on Fiverr. Some players don't know to look around and others just don't care to. This is a critical step to gather as much information as you possibly can about your initial draw. See, sometimes you'll be uncontested and that's fine, you can go about looting whatever. But other times when a few teams are landing with you or near you, you need to figure out where they're landing. You don't want to land on 3 people looting one little building like in Geyser or something. You've got to land according to what is going on around you. You need to get better at free looking, and you have to think about the dropship's trajectory. So you want to look to your left and your right. Who jumped before you? Who jumped after you? You want to look above you and below you because teams could be in your blind spots. You may not see that they jumped at the same time as you and they're literally right above you. And they end up trying to land right where you and your teammates landed. So planning out how to land better will help you learn how to fight off drop way easier. Trust me. Tip number 3, practice, practice, practice. Of course, this is an obvious tip, but this really isn't rocket science, guys. If you're a casual player and you're only playing a few hours a week or, 1 hour every other day, it's going to be really hard to get better, especially if you're solo queuing. And look, I'm not blaming anyone. Obviously, everyone has their own life and obligations, but just understand, Apex Legends has been out almost 3 years, and the skill ceiling has been significantly raised year after year. People who have dedicated a lot of time and energy into this game have gotten way better, and they have figured out methods and mechanics to outplay their opponents much easier than the average casual player. This game has a lot of factors and details that require your attention at all times. So if you aren't used to it, it becomes even more difficult to get kills and to get wins. So with that said, you need to put some time in to just improve at landing, looting, and fighting. You've got to keep up with the speed of the game by continuously putting yourself in the familiar situations. Your mind will surprise you with how it works to react after you've already experienced certain things many times before. And I always recommend watching high-level creators to improve because it can be a good way to see what they do in order to succeed. I think a lot of players want instant results like overnight, and the reality is that's just not going to work for the majority of you. You've got to actually put some time into this game to start to see improvements. I wish there was some easier way I could tell you, but that's really what it boils down to in a lot of scenarios. I want you guys to know I've saved the best 2 tips for last, so listen closely. Here's tip number 4. You've got to understand your limits as a solo queue player. Apex is a team game at its core, and it takes a lot to knock somebody on good armor, and it takes even more to do that to a whole team. If you're solo queuing, you've got to look for opportunities so that you and your teammates are fighting together. Sometimes this means you have to bait your teammates, where you know your teammate is about to engage in a fight and you can work an alternate angle so you guys can team fire that person without that enemy actually ever looking at you. There's only so much you can control when you're solo queuing. Sometimes your teammates will be off doing their own thing because some randoms will care more about looting and others will care more about fighting. Now, depending on what you're more interested in doing, it can be kind of rough if you guys all have different play styles. Now, the results are going to vary widely from game to game because you're going to have different teammates every game. And for this reason, it makes the solo queue experience inconsistent at best. As long as you're aware of this though, you will be more flexible to the outcomes of your games with randoms. Ways in which you can try to guide your teammates is by being vocal and by using pings. Some randoms are in their own world and they could be so oblivious to the 3-stack Apex Predator team that is chasing you down through the entire map while you run for your life. But you really can't go wrong if you just try to communicate with them and hope for the best. It's really your only option. All right, guys, tip number 5 is a little bit of a rant, but you want to listen closely if you care about getting better as a solo. If you're alone in Apex, you need to look for isolation or distractions in order to pull off any disadvantage fight. Let me explain. This game has a lengthy time to kill, and it's coupled with a lengthy time to heal. In fact, it's probably the longest in both regards for any battle royale shooter. So this means that taking on any disadvantage fight like a 1v2 or a 1v3 fundamentally centers around 2 things. Number 1, isolation, and number 2, distractions. If you have to take on a 1v3 and the team you're going against is all full health and shields and you get no isolation, you're just not going to win that. It's not possible in most scenarios. And for distractions, it is possible to take on a team that is fairly close to one another if you are third partying or you catching them shortly after they just fought, because then the time to kill has been shortened. You obviously need to hit some big shots and you yourself need to already have some armor that's decent and be full health for this to work. But in my recent 5-tip video, I talked about how no-fill isn't really balanced and it doesn't give you a fair shot at things. And some players had things to say like, oh, well, look at Fade or the Gaming Merchant. And I just want you to know that those players are anomalies when it comes to that, because 98% of this player base isn't going to be able to pull off what they can do in no-fill. You've got to keep in mind, when a 3-man team knows that they're fighting a solo, they're going to play 10 times more aggressive on them than they would if that solo had a teammate or two. But with that said, if you watch any no-fill players and you see them succeed, keep in mind, if they aren't getting isolation or the enemies aren't already weak from a previous team, that solo just isn't going to win. And also keep in mind, watch how many times they're dying over and over. It's usually the reasons I just listed. In my opinion, Apex should just accept the fact that if you solo queue in this game, you're often stuck as a solo, but in a trio or a duos match, because your teammates will probably die and then quit the game. And for this reason, I think solo should be added. And if you're one of the players who will cry, but it's a team game and certain legends will be better than others, well, I got news for you. That's already true. If I play Lifeline in a trios match, but both my teammates die off, drop, and quit, well, guess what? I'm now Lifeline as a solo in a trios match. So what makes more sense? Me fighting other solos or me being skilled enough and getting lucky enough to pull off 1v3s all the time? Exactly my point. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So when you watch Fade or the Gaming Merchant, keep in mind how they're slicing up opponents into separate 1v1s. Fade does a great job of this when he's in the zipline building. He creates isolation through his movement in the zipline building. They all try to chase him, they get lost in the building, and he uses his movement as a way to split them up. But if he's not in that situation, or he's out in an open field, it's going to be like 10 times harder or borderline impossible to take on a 3-man team that's holding hands and all has angles on him. And that goes for any player. It doesn't matter who it is. That's my biggest qualm with no-fill. And that's my biggest issue with Apex and how the time to kill is so long and the time to heal is also so long. So here's my conclusion. Don't solo queue if you don't have to. See, lots of players keep asking for more solo queue tips, but the reality is it usually makes Apex way less enjoyable and 10 times more difficult. Of course, I solo queue all the time, but that doesn't take away the frustrations from it. This is just my opinion, but with my extensive experience in Apex, with well over 4,000 hours played and thousands of solo queue matches, it usually sucks. Sure, that one game you win with randoms is great, but that doesn't really make up for the 20 terrible games that usually follow or come before that win. If you guys enjoyed this video, thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll consider subscribing so you don't miss out on my next upload. That's going to be it for me. Peace.